Welcome to the Christopher Peter Review. My name is Christopher Peter and I am the political economist behind the Christopher Peter Review podcast and blog. I started the Christopher Peter Review to provide an economic perspective while discussing salient current events that impact our public policy, economic outcomes, and overall society. As a political economist, my focus is identifying solutions that provide the maximum amount of benefit for the greatest number of people, while considering our political and economic systems and social traditions. In our content, we focus on ideas to help make our nation and world a better, more prosperous, and safer place while protecting strongly held principles of freedom, democracy, free markets and diversity. Each week you will find a featured podcast episode posted to this site. Please enjoy this episode, and when you are ready for more content, please click on the image above to visit the full Christopher Peter Review site. I thank you in advance for your viewership and welcome to the Christopher Peter Review. My name is Christopher Peter and it is my pleasure to introduce you to the podcast that will serve as your source for common sense analytical commentary on salient current events impacting our public policy, economic outcomes, and overall society. Our objective is to provide ideas and analysis to help make our society a better place to live, work, and thrive in. This past weekend we remembered the life and impact of Dr. Martin Luther King. By now, we all know the story of his life, his work, and his legacy. In an era filled with such heated anger, resentment, and violence, Dr. King leaned on his faith and chose the path of peaceful protest. Chose the path of non-violence when all too many were eager to match anger with anger, hate with hate, and violence with violence. I think it is important for society to remember the lessons learned from Dr. King's teaching and understand the opportunities for all Americans going forward.
My name is Jennifer and welcome. I believe that Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech is one of America's most important messages in our storied history. President John F. Kennedy challenged Americans to serve our nation by asking us to not take from society but seek ways to give to society. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt challenged us to show bravery in the face of fear. In our most challenging times, President Abraham Lincoln gave many historic addresses, guiding America through a difficult period of soul search, division, and up to the initial point of reconnecting. Dr. King was not an elected official, but his words in the famous Dream speech challenged Americans to look beyond the color of one's skin onto the quality of their character. From these political and social leaders, Americans have many timeless words and calls to actions that are still relevant to this very day.
We are in a time where fear is a staple in political marketing. Where our leaders do not guide us in standing up to fear, but use it to advance political agendas, increase governmental power, and restrict our freedoms. During the pandemic, we saw how powerful fear was in stifling debate and our inherent right to question the decisions of our government. Americans are asking more from the government each and every day rather than embracing their right to self-determination and seeking opportunity in their own economic path in life. Rather than finding ways to solve the problems of our generations, many expect the government to foot the bill for their personal choices and decisions. And Americans across all groups are growing more obsessed by the color of our skins and lacking interests in knowing the individual character as collectivism is embraced by some. People flock and surround themselves with people that look, talk, speak, and think like they do. Especially in terms of ideological identities.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. As our society grows more complex and diverse, people still greatly rely on stereotypes to determine how they interact with each other in society. The exact thing that created the problems in the first place. For instance, there is a line of thinking that people have a racial identity in society, which impacts how people are treated. Instead of pushing to defy these stereotypes, the people who claim to advance society towards unity and harmony use these stereotypes to control how you act, think, and what to believe. These identities become your litmus test for how well you really fit your demographic group. If you veer too far, then these use fit to scare you back in line, which is not the right approach. We make the same mistakes with ideology, where people need to think and act in accordance to rigidly defined rules and principles. People are not exclusively conservative, liberal, or progressives on every issue. There are always some issues where you may agree with the conservative argument, some issues you may agree more with the liberal argument, and many issues where you support a blend of both positions. But, there is an expectation for rigidity in our political ideologies. If we truly value diversity, should we not tolerate that people can be individuals with individual personalities, views, and beliefs even if it conflicts with the supposed norm or the preferred?
Our diverse society is not monolithic and there really needs to be greater tolerance for people who may act, think, behave, pray, and look differently than any one of us do. What do we mean when we talk about diversity and tolerance? I believe that diversity means that we give equal and fair consideration to all people regardless of what they look like, how they pray, and other check-off-the-box demographics. In a free society, people have the right to live their life in the manner of their choosing, as long as it does not prohibit another from doing the same. Right? That is what we all love about the idea of America and hope for. But do we really afford people that ability to show their own being? In our society, individuality, free thought, and choice are becoming extinct, therefore making the concept of diversity. Not just in terms of intellectual diversity. Because of the obsession with identity in our society, people really do face social consequences if they think, behave, or make choices that vary from those in their identity groups. We had a national presidential candidate question whether a person was black enough if they did not want to vote for him. There are plenty of black Americans who did not want to see their hard earnings dissipate due to poor economic policies or see their communities devolve into less safe areas. Those are not a racial identity thing, but a common sense dilemma people of all races face every election cycle. I believe people obsess with rigidity in America because it makes it easier for policymakers, pundits, or influencers to control society. People like predictable processes and outcomes. Are our views too rigid to solve issues with racism and other forms of discrimination? I think so to a degree. Society in general is not willing to acknowledge that hate is multidirectional, not just white against the world. But minorities too show their hate at times. All forms of hate are unacceptable. But there is a manicured spectrum that people want to address the issue. As Dr. King told us, hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. We must expand our social tolerance to really demonstrate the diversity we want to see across society.
I think many people have good intentions but bad plans of actions when they approach the issue. I think some want to be that canary in the mine shaft. But canaries are meant to detect all incidents of carbon monoxide, not selective ones. The selective incidents and the ignoring the multidirectional form hate has taken in our society. There still are problems with white supremacy. There is no denying that or excusing that by any means. But there also are problems growing with hate between minority groups that we do not readily classify as hate incidents. Ones that the media is really quick to turn the page on. But all forms of hate are objectionable, condemnable, and not acceptable. At the same time, we cannot ignore a sad but true fact that we also cannot ignore is that there will always be some incidents and tension in a nation blessed with the cultural diversity America has. Competing interests and misperceptions will always pit one group against another. Fairly or unfairly. That is just a reality of life. We need to be able to handle and address these events without losing the progress we made and purposefully setting society back. We should not give any room for anyone wanting to commit hate crimes, but there are always people who choose the low-hanging fruit.
I do not want the word diversity to become another political buzzword in society. We see so many large corporations use the idea of diversity as a marketing ploy to attract business and talent. We see them display awards or recognitions, but we do not really look to see what was the criteria for those. Many people are not aware that there are subscription fees and a survey given. Not the most objective way of ensuring a company is truly deserving of an award. I always wonder whether there is any validation of the data received, if that is even possible. Does anyone see if minority workers have more stringent requirements than those in the majority? Do companies afford equal visibility and opportunities for people based on their effort, not just their backgrounds or network? Also, it would be interesting to see what % of subscribers actually get the right to claim the reward. To be fair, this is something I would question for any accolades companies typically brag about. Whether sustainability or customer satisfaction. Many times we see claims and they contradict our actual interactions and experiences with those organizations. But, my point is that America must be open-minded to accept that good can come in different forms. We need to be willing to accept that people of different backgrounds, viewpoints, and cultures exist and have the right to. People regardless of their demographic have the right to earn their economic outcomes based not on their demographics, but their effort, skill, and ambition. I do not think people should be given a handout simply for their demographics either. Rather, people should have equal and fair processes that are not circumvented.
We should also understand that our diversity as a nation is a strength and an asset. While we have different views, different traditions, different experiences, and different needs and wants, we have a great deal in common. All people want opportunities to experience freedom, safety and security, opportunities for growth and prosperity, and respect. At the very least, we should be able to come to the agreement that we all can afford people the basic level of kindness and fairness. Be open-minded enough to see the true character and the individual we all are regardless of our backgrounds. As we continue to remember the contributions of national heroes like Dr. Martin Luther King, we need to work towards that moment in his speech where a diverse group of kids are able to hold hands with each other. Not just those in their identity or ideological groups.
I agree that we all could do a much better job of showing basic human decency to each other. Not let superficial knee-jerk reactions shape our views. I do not believe anyone should ever be forced to serve another's champion or ally. We all can stand on our own 2 feet. Thinking otherwise devalues the person you are supposedly trying to help. I think we are just asking for a fair opportunity that sets aside bias and does not accept it as part of life. In the past, I made the economic argument that we need to embrace diversity because it makes our economy better. It improves the collective knowledge and perspective of our economy, society, and individual organizations. Part of our American greatness is due to our ability to pull people from around the world to work in America and contribute to our prosperity, while accessing opportunities not available in their homelands. America is truly the most diverse nation in the world and is the top destination for immigration, both legal and illegal. We must embrace our similarities rather than obsess about our differences. Also, we need not be so rigid that we end up making the solutions much worse than the problems. My name is Christopher Peter and welcome to the podcast on the Christopher Peter Review, where we have conversations on the salient current events impacting our public policy, economic outcomes, and overall society. Podcasts here and the common sense commentary available on our content channels focus on providing ideas to help make our society a better place to live, work, and thrive in. In this podcast episode, we are going to discuss the need for diversity in hiring. How well the federal government is handling the foreign policy challenges that appear to be creeping right up to our border. And discuss ideas on how the federal government can better manage our national debt, which now exceeds our annual gross domestic product for quite some time now. So let us begin this special edition of the Christopher Peter Review podcast. The best candidate should get the job, period. That should not be a controversial sentiment. Where the controversy resides is when there are situations where the best candidate might not have gotten the job because there is bias in the selection process or the pipeline of candidates is purposefully manipulated to limit the pool to pick from. We cannot deny that discrimination is a real problem in our society. There are many organizations that go to great levels to market their supposed diversity or awards they paid for in order to attract diverse pools of candidates, where their selection criteria will purposefully eliminate qualified candidates that do not fit a biased profile or allow certain candidates to circumvent the process in order to be a preferred choice. There are also biases that are sometimes personal, where people in hiring positions or positions that determine promotions may hold certain subconscious biases where they will eliminate candidates for consideration because of the so-called gut feeling. When that gut feeling is really the candidate's name does not sound like one from where they grew up or the candidate does not look like people they prefer to associate with. There are numerous ways discrimination impacts economic opportunities in any industry. That is why it is important for organizations to continue to seek ways to remove biases in their processes and diversify candidate pipelines. I am not a fan of quotas simply for the appearance of diversity. Again, the best candidates should get the jobs. Using injustice to cure injustice just proves that 2 wrongs may make a right.
My name is Jennifer and welcome. The argument for quotas is that there were essentially quotas used in the past to keep minorities out of high-paying, economically beneficial opportunities. Why not use that level the playing field? But, I agree with you that this practice does not solve the problem. Because solutions should eliminate or at the very least reduce the negative, not redistribute. A problem I have with the general notion that the best person should get the job makes it seem like the minority might not be the best person. I know that is not what you are saying, but there are some that may mean that when they say it. In all fairness, the only way for the best person to get a job is through a completely objective process where there is no leeway for people to determine what they claim is fit or how well they mesh. Or minimize the impact of those traits. Many organizations will have a method of identifying a pool of candidates to interview based on objective criteria, but have very subjective measures to determine the final candidate. I do think that approach does give hiring managers the appearance of diversity, but the wiggle room to find that demographic match they may have been looking for in the beginning subconsciously or not. I agree fit is somewhat important because a team has to work well together, but it cannot be the only determining factor. If the hiring manager does not associate personally with a diverse crowd, what are the chances that they will see a fit professionally with someone outside of what they perceive as their norm?
I am Adriana. I think the opportunity for some organizations is working to diversify their candidate pipelines and having multi-channels for recruitment. There is a real need for greater exposure for opportunities that some groups have been excluded from in the past. And if you really want the best candidate to get the job, you must ensure you have a broad enough search to have the pool with the best possible candidates available. I get the problem with quotas, but I think they can be better managed. Like going through a round of hiring and allow for the flexibility to open a few spots up if the class of new hires is not as diverse as it could be. The end goal should be that people, regardless of their demographics, should be able to compete in a fair and equitable process. That is not the current situation right now. But there are reasonable opportunities to move forward in a manner that does not give handouts but affords visibility where society was once blind to.
I certainly agree with your points. We need more objective measures to reduce bias in our processes, and we can be creative in our methods to cast a wider net for a better pool of candidates. Diversity makes our society and organizations better. It is a benefit, not a challenge, as long as an organization can help guide everyone to achieve the same goal and accepts the same level of objective standards. In many of our social problems, there are macro-level aspects of the topic and micro-level aspects as well. For those of you who are not economists, a macro level is a high level like an industry or society scale, and micro is a particular organization or region per se. Do not want to come off as condescending, just want to make sure we are all on the same page. We discussed the macro level, but what about the micro level regarding the NFL? Do they have a hiring problem in regards to diversity in hiring? The argument that people make on this topic is that 70% of the players are minorities, so 70% of the coaches, front office, and owners should look the same. I do think more black coaches or other minorities. But, again, not a backer of the quota. One could argue that the population of players does not match the overall population. But, not every industry or economic pursuit matches our population. There are certain fields that are more attractive to some groups of people and other groups prefer other professions. The goal again should be that people should have a fair chance at obtaining employment in a desired field if they are able to demonstrate the skill, ability, and fit for that opportunity. More so the skill and ability. I do agree that black head coaches are not given the same leeway that their white counterparts are given. They are more likely to be fired for lack of success early. I do think there are many coordinators who never even get an interview when they have the skill set. I do not agree with casting every hire that is not a minority as a potential discriminatory hire. There are many times where the best performance during an interview can secure a job over better qualified candidates who do not present as well. In my opinion, the NFL can help solve this problem with greater opportunities for mentoring overall and greater corporate level training so that all potential candidates are better prepared for the process and not just the ones who had opportunities to work with the elite head coaches. The Rooney Rule opens the door. But, if you do not develop the pipeline or level, balance it to a degree, you will always get the same results.
There are different strategies of recruitment done for different types of roles in an organization. Right? If you are hiring a class of candidates, the standards are much different than when a single person is hired. Typically, organizations select their CEOs from a maintained list of candidates that, should the job become available, they will recruit from that list. They track the careers of these individuals or see the progress in the areas that under the respective purview of the candidate. So, they have a general sense of what they are acquiring. It is not the same when you are hiring an at-will employee who, if you are wrong, you just end the relationship with little cost or setbacks. The opportunity is to encourage leaders to expand that list. Sometimes we lose the forest through the trees. When you are tracking a handful of candidates, you may miss the gems that rise suddenly. If you have an open-minded and an objective process, you may find that what you thought you were seeking is not the right direction for this hire. Or that after you expose the decision makers to other possibilities, your original criteria is what is really best for the organization at the moment. A wide and thorough search will help you find the best candidate, either reaffirming your list or exposing you to someone you might have missed and allowed a competitor to benefit from. That is something to consider as well.
There is a need for the candidates to earn the positions as well. When I hear people downplay the real problem with interviewing issues, I question, why does that person not work on their interviewing skills? Maybe they do or maybe they do not. Also, you have to be able to adequately address shortcomings in your past. Some simple Google searches might help some of these so-called pundits on these networks see why certain candidates are having issues with hiring. That is not the case with all. But, that is a reality for many people who have lost their jobs based on performance or having records from a moment of poor decisions. That is why I believe that hiding records does not help the process. rather than individual needs to help hiring managers or decision makers understand how that setback made them a better person and how they are better able to handle adversity than the average candidate. Back to football, I agree that training seminars and mentoring can help candidates seeking advancements to understand the basics or the process. The stars will always shine. But some diamonds may be pulled from the rough.
Whether you are recruiting for a small business, a large corporation, or a high-profile sports league, you should ensure that you are recruiting the best talent by maintaining a diverse pipeline of candidates. Too many organizations rely on relatives of people currently working there or people in their Rolodex. Instead, they need to cast a wider net, execute a fair and objective process, and potentially find ways to influence their candidates' pools by working with skill creators like education systems. There are many organizations that will allow you to claim diversity awards as long as you pay the subscription fee. But, organizations who truly embrace diversity will avoid the negative consequences that come with companies that completely avoid it. The United States of America was founded on the principle that all Americans are created equal. All Americans have a right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Unfortunately, the United States has not always lived up to our espoused values. In our past, many have found their right to life, liberty, and happiness impeded by discrimination. Still today, racism and other forms of discrimination stand in the way of many people's access to our fundamental social promises and their paths toward freedom. Our nation's diversity is one of greatest strength, with our fundamental belief in self-reliance, self-determination, and freedom. Americans find a way to get past our superficial differences regarding race, gender, religion, or other personal demographics and focus on expanding opportunity to all striving for it. Cultural diversity along with intellectual diversity allows our society to attract the best and brightest from around the world and within our own communities. Our economy benefits when all can access our free market economy, thus reducing government dependence. Our elected officials need to find a balanced way to allow all Americans their rightful access to economic and social freedom. One cannot deny that racism and other forms of discrimination still exist in our society. Even in many blue states, there are some that believe race, gender, and demographics rightfully dictate outcomes and opportunity. Some people honestly believe that non-whites and women lack the intellectual ability to compete. Conversely, some minorities unfairly cast every white person as racist. Racism played a major role in economic disparities, but it will not help solve the issues. There is a falsehood that identity politics will solve our issues with race. Instead of repeating mistakes of associating only with people that look, act, speak, pray, and think like us, Americans must seek to understand those differences, which can present opportunities. Embracing diversity with new markets, employee pools, and investment opportunities. Despite some differences, many in society have shared values and similar needs. Appreciate differences each person can bring and unite around of shared perspectives. All groups in our society struggles with the confines of groupthink, adhering to pre-ideals passed on from generations. People must add their own experiences and learning to the equation. There may be reasons for someone feeling a certain way about another group, but that sentiment needs not to automatically the next generation. At some point the cycle must break. All sides have room to improve in this area. The challenging question for policymakers is how to facilitate a move forward. Initially, there was a need in implementing preferential programs, but there is a need to modernize approaches. While programs helped, there still lacks adequate pipelines of talent, as many individuals do not pursue programs or the fields with such programs. A greater focus needs to be reducing disparities in skill training, where education quality is determined by geographic. Government should not remain in the business of winners and losers but can help ensure its functions and equal access to skill development regardless of demographics. Americans deserve equal opportunity to find success, based upon their own ambition, effort, and persistence. Allow all people the ability to determine their own level of success. Greater equality can positively impact our economy, as subgroups largely dependent on social programs can become productive contributors to our free market economy. As stated in Expanding Economic Opportunities, many communities have a potential for economic growth and prosperity for residents. The political dogma and environments need some alterations to improve the attractiveness and preparedness to take advantage of opportunity. There are many areas in our society that could benefit from a change of dogma. crime-ridden and economically depressed areas need to reshape their political thinking to better improve the prospects for residents living in their neighborhoods. The most effective social program one can provide another person is a job, which can help promote economic freedom. Policy changes in these communities is to help attract investment to spur job creation to set these areas towards greater opportunity and better social outcomes in the future. Unfortunately, many of the leaders focus more on maintaining their own political power than the outcomes of their residents. The path forward should be expanding access to economic opportunities to communities that are not normally at the Wall Street. Revitalization of these areas have a long-term positive effect on crime reduction as well as lower the cost of welfare programs, justice institutions, and government dependence. There will be a need to invest in infrastructure improvements, education structure, and community safety. Eventually, the focus needs to be developing a pool of local investors that can sustain it in the future. Expanding free market and empowering the people will go much further than empowering the government over the people. Despite some setbacks, society has made real progress on race relations and discrimination compared to generations ago. But those achievements are fleeting if progress is yielded because people are not truly given equal opportunity. Government should not dictate outcomes but give all an equal chance at success. That only happens if society expands economic opportunity to those groups previously ignored. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is an iconic figure in the annals of American history. Exemplified the ability for an individual outside the typical halls of power to make indelible change in our society. All Americans, regardless of background, benefited from Dr. King's message. A message establishing hope for a society united harmoniously regardless of race. Challenges. America must strive to reduce social tension related to race, gender, and other demographics. There is no easy answer to solve the racial tension in our society all too often. As the most diverse nation in the world, needs combined with past transgressions create challenges for identifying a realistic solution. Strong emotion, unwavering political views harden stances. Our cultural political conditions create unnecessary dichotomies preventing society from solving many of our important issues. Until society can have a true honest dialogue surrounding our tensions, there really is no way forward. An obstacle is someone who moves past the issue by overlooking the need to address discrimination in its current form. Others want to weaponize discrimination and view every social conflict in the context of discrimination. Both sides miss the middle ground. Society needs to be able to address incidents without regression to division. There will always be conflicts or incidents involving different races. Facts must be vetted before one jumps to conclusions or dismisses possibilities. The biggest impact society can accomplish in the near term is to reduce tensions and eliminate violence related to discrimination. There has yet to be a year in recent memory where headlines did not include stories covering the loss of life related to some form of discrimination. Whether it is a large or small-scale event, hate crimes need to. People should not lose their lives for the mental illness of others. Society must fight hate in all its forms, not only the politically convenient. Peoples must at a basic level respect the right for respect the right to life, and the pursuit of all, not a select few. One does not have to agree with or embrace views or values, but one should respect their rights. The great aspect of America is the belief in openness for all and universal personal and political freedoms for all citizens. Also, it does not hurt experience another culture or seek to bridge the gap between cultures by sharing commonalities. Our failed attempts at fighting discrimination resulted in a more divided society due to inconsistency. Resulted in more discriminatory feelings. Broad of a paintbrush and exploiting every incident, creating groups to emote resentment and division. There is a need to combat discrimination and hate. But, there needs to be push towards ensuring justice and moving communities towards forgiveness and unity. Forgiveness is a critical aspect in American society needs to combat all forms of hate. Not only the politically convenient forms. Social harmony will not happen when hatred is circumstances and overreacted to in others. Approach only reinforces stereotypes of inequity, as one race bears the complete responsibility. In reality, all bear some responsibility. Hate will be defeated by love, learning, and tolerance, not entitlement, revenge, and anger. No one can be sure if America Dr. King's dream. That does not mean our society should stop trying.
There is a clear need to identify a new path and dogma around.
Thank you for experiencing this presentation of the Christopher Peter Review. Please continue to visit us at www.crcrvw.com for new content and explore the content channels available. Thank you once again for experiencing this podcast episode, and we will see you next time.